The third concept I want to discuss is eudaimonia. It's hard to translate this one. I'll get into that in a second here. But another way of describing phronesis, what we just talked about in the last video, is to say that a person knows what it means to live well or to flourish. It's really difficult to translate this concept. The Greeks had something very different in mind, but usually we translate it, or you see it translated, happiness. But that's not quite it. It's sometimes translated flourishing, but both of these can be a little misleading. For one, happiness in our contemporary way of thinking, in the West at least, is something that you know subjectively, right? So if somebody believes they're happy, then they're happy because it's a subjective feeling. You can't be wrong about your happiness. But for the Greeks, you can be wrong about your happiness. And so imagine if somebody says, I am as fit as a fiddle, I'm healthy, but they're riddled with cancer at the time. They could be wrong about whether or not they're healthy. They could feel good, I guess, but they could be wrong about whether or not they're actually flourishing and healthy. And so some people say that maybe a better idea, a better way to translate it would be just to translate it flourishing, like a plant flourishes and a human body flourishes. You can think you're flourishing, but not flourish. That has a few problems with it as well. Just like with happiness, you can be wrong in the Greek conception about being happy, which is different than the Western conception. Also, for the Greeks, only humans can flourish. But for us, we can talk sensibly about a plant flourishing. You know, it's growing, it's blooming, it has lots of fruit or flowers or leaves or whatever. And you can talk about an animal flourishing, but for the Greeks, only humans can flourish. So maybe something between happiness and flourishing. The idea with eudaimonia is that it is true happiness, or happiness worth having. It's living well, not by your own standards, but what it means to be a flourishing human. And for the virtue ethicist, that means living virtuously. That means having and possessing the virtues. So attaining eudaimonia means living a virtuous life. And virtues are those character traits that generally benefit you. And so this is talking about, now it can be true that people with vices can achieve success and that kind of stuff. It's not really talking about that. But generally speaking, all things being equal, if you have good moral luck, then being an honest, trustworthy, loyal person, being a person who is kind and compassionate and that kind of stuff will benefit you for having a good life, and typically vices will make your life bad, right? And so the eudaimonian person, or the person who is a eudaimon, is someone who possesses the virtues. And that's what it means to live a good life, because that's what it means to be a human, right? So those are the three principles of virtue ethics. I'm going to go and launch into really quickly, so it's arete, phronesis, and eudaimonia. I'm going to launch into quickly in this video the advantages of virtue ethics. And remember, again, I am a virtue ethicist, so you're going to see me giving these virtue ethics a little bit more attention and maybe more credibility than somebody who is a consequentialist ethicist is. But it's my class, I can do what I want. So anyway, I think that virtue ethics, one of the advantages of it is it captures what a lot of the other theories neglect. The other theories seem to praise people for doing something wrong, that even if their motives are wrong. The consequentialist or Kantian could be calloused and hate people, but still be praised for being morally upright because they did the right things. Those theories are based on actions. You could say, you know, I don't really care about poor people, but I'm going to give anyway because it's my duty. I think they're all leeches and takers and all that kind of stuff. But because I give, I've either made the world a better place for the consequentialist, or I followed a universalizable rule or principle, which seems a little crappy. Imagine, for instance, if I went to my girlfriend on Valentine's Day and I knocked on the door and she answers the door and I have some roses and some chocolates and she says, "Oh, for me? Why so much?" And I put up my hand and say, "You know what? I have studied what it is the duty of boyfriends to do. And I know that on these occasions we are to bring a gift. And so I'm bringing the gift like I'm supposed to do so that you know my character's sound. I'm also studied and know that boyfriends should take girlfriends out for dinner, and so please, I would like to take you now for dinner, right? That would be that would not result in the consequences that I'm hoping they would result in, right? I'm probably going to sleep on the couch that night. It's not very romantic. It's not very sensitive. And yet that's exactly what maybe the consequential or the deontological ethicist might say. Or I could hold up my hand and say, I know that this will bring about the greatest happiness to the greatest number of people, and so therefore I'm giving you this because I know that it will bring about a better state of affairs. But if instead I knocked on the door and I opened it and she looked at the roses and she said, "Oh, for me, why so much?" And I said, "I just love being with you. It just makes me so happy. And these roses aren't nearly as beautiful as you, but they reminded me of your beauty. And I wanted you to be surrounded by beautiful things because you brought beauty into my life. And I think that, I hope that these roses give you some sense of how much I love and appreciate you. And it would make me so happy if I was able to take you out tonight." By the way, I'm stealing these examples. They're not my own. So that would result in a very different approach, right? Because that shows something about my character, about my person, about her as a person, right? It praises her as a person, and I want to give these things to her, and I desire to give these things to her, and that want and desire are very important. Another example I'm stealing, say you have a friend who is in the hospital, and you go and see that friend, and the friend's very sick, and the friend says, "Oh, thank you for coming. I was so lonely, and it's such a help to be there." And I raise my hand, and I say, "Well, I have studied what is the duty of friends to do, and I just want you to know that I don't want to be here, but I'm here because that is what a friend should do," right? I'm doing the right action, but it's not something that would be morally praiseworthy. At least my friend wouldn't think it's very morally praiseworthy. But if I said, "Oh man, I just couldn't stand the thought of you being alone during this hard time. I really wanted to be beside you, to walk with you in this time. I wouldn't want to be anyplace else but here with you right now," right? That would be a better attitude. And virtue ethics captures that. Virtue ethics shows that it's more than just doing things. It's the emotion and the desire behind that. So I like it for that reason. Also, another reason that I like virtue ethics is that it allows for loyalty in special relationships. A major part of Kantianism and consequentialism is that you have to be impartial, that there is no partiality in ethics. But virtue ethicists realize that you have general duties of benevolence to everybody, but there are special duties to others. So I usually ask my students when I'm there, I say, "How many of you are parents?" And there are several people who are parents. And I say, "Now imagine that you are in a sinking ship like the Titanic. You're in a lifeboat. On one side of the waters, you see a doctor who you know is working on a cure for some type of cancer or something like that, but is doing great work, is really, really smart. And on the other side of the waters, you see your child, your young child." And, I don't never mean to be offensive, but let's just say, your child, he's still eating the Play-Doh and stuff, right? He's not going to be the brightest bulb in the box. He's not going to be the sharpest nail or tack or whatever. He's just not that bright, right? Not everybody's bright. Not everybody's bright. It's the truth of the matter. And you are realistic, and you know your child isn't one of those bright ones and isn't going to cure cancer or something in his future or her future. So anyway, you're there in the boat, and you have to decide which one you're going to get. Now, obviously, every parent will tell you, "I'm going to go get my child," right? And I think every single person who's watching this video will say, "Yeah, she's not a terrible mother," if it's a she. "She's not a terrible mother for going to get her child. That's what I would expect. I would expect my mother to come get me. If I had a child there, I would go and get her or him," right? That's just the way we think. We have these bonds to certain people. And in fact, if I'm the doctor on the other side and I look up and I see the mother in the boat and the child on the other side, I go, "Shit," right? "I'm dead," right? Because I know that the mother isn't going to come to me. I don't expect the mother to come to me. And in fact, if the mother came to me, I would think a little bit poorly about the mother, right? I would think that the mother wasn't being a very good mother. And so it's kind of a natural part of us that we love and appreciate those close to us. And loyalty is a virtue in virtue ethics. But in the other ethical theories, it's all about impartiality, and virtue ethics allows for these types of special relationships, and I think that's an advantage. Lastly, it seems like our moral education kind of parallels what we do in virtue ethics. And so if you have a kid and the kid picks up the cat and slings it around by its tail or something like that, you don't usually say, does that bring about the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people? Or can you consistently will that maxim be universalized or whatever? You usually say, don't do that, that's mean to the cat, be nice to the cat, and you're training the character. The idea is that you really can't give a child enough rules or turn them into human calculators enough so that they can do consequentialism, but you can train their character. You can focus on their character so that anything that they then face is something that they can handle because they've trained their characters. So for me, virtue ethics is good all around. I actually have a section on objections to virtue ethics, but I think I'm just going to leave it with the advantages because I do the objections. Well, you know what? I'll give you the objections. I had another section in which I actually answered the objections, which I haven't done on the other ones, but I'll save that for a different video. So one more video to go in this one.